21 years, 21 centuries later of trying, in the structures of our own making, God has called us to love much more deeply and in much more detail. There is no question that the world is increasingly diverse. Our words spoken in the same language don't even mean the same thing anymore. Wicked, the word wicked. Take the word wicked, for example. The word wicked can mean wicked. Or it can mean really, really cool. Like, that was wicked, man. We are bombing ISIS and Al-Qaeda splinter group while proclaiming the right of law-abiding Islamic groups to live in peace and dignity as our neighbors. We are increasingly divisive. We are still denying that climate change is still a pressing issue, even as we have proved that we are the cause of it. If you go to the Disciples Reconciliation website, and you notice in your bulletin this morning, you have envelopes for reconciliation giving, you will find all kinds of definitions of prejudice. Prejudice is a preconceived opinion not based on any reason or actual experience. Prejudice confuses the past and threatens the future. The few of the descriptions of prejudice found on the Disciples Reconciliation website. Your over and above offering allows the Christian church disciples of Christ to love as never before, making schoolyards instead of prison yards, building relationships instead of fortresses. In an increasingly tricky, frightening world, you and I must not be afraid to respond to trick questions. Never be afraid to listen. Never be afraid to learn. Never be afraid to protect. Never be afraid to admit where we have fallen short. Never be afraid to begin something that frightens us, but is ultimately for our own good and for the good of the world. As we learn from our mistakes, we become more knowledgeable and therefore more powerful, like Jesus. We have authority. As I said earlier, the praise chorus we sang this morning admonished us to share his love. As we share God's love, we demonstrate we are not afraid to give our power away. My church, my job, my world, my way equals fear. We have to stand up for and make a place for what we learn is right and protect the rights of all. I've told you this story before, but it bears repeating. When I was still a student in seminary working on my master's, I was, at that time, and I had been for many years, the chief musician for our entire international church. And we were together planning the General Assembly where 5,000 or 6,000 of our closest friends gathered for worship. And I happened to be in the room, Fred Cropper, with about 15 white women who happened all to be ordained ministers, something to which I was still aspiring. I still had 2 years of undergraduate work to do before I finished my master's and even began my doctorate. And everything these women planned, I hated more and more. Every word they said, I just was going like this. I was flinching. I had worked myself up into such a lather that by the time lunch came, I was just, I can't believe these. I have to plan worship with these women. And at that moment, an African-American woman walked into the room, and I said, she will help me. She will help me get this church back on track. So, we all went out to lunch, and she missed the morning meeting. So we're all walking down the street in some place like, where's it really hot? Texas. It was where it's 100 degrees by 10 a.m. We were in Fort Worth. We're walking down the streets 100 degrees, and I said to her, hang back. And I told her everything that had happened that morning and how these women had just, everything was just horrible, how they planned worship. They just, they didn't know anything about worshiping for the whole church and making it divided. It was going to be awful. And I just knew, because she was African American and I was African American, she was going to agree with me and go, oh, I know what you've been up against, Bill. I know. She stopped and looked me in my face and she said, it's interesting, isn't it, Bill? Every opportunity is an opportunity to learn. Speak up. Say what you think. I didn't expect that from her. I wanted her to make me feel better in this pity party I was having for myself. She said, get on with what you have come here to do. Share the gifts that you have. The church has trusted you to do this job. Now do it. Collaborate. Be a part. I went back in, and by the time the meeting was over, they had commissioned me to write 2 anthems for the play. Oh, Bill, people, Bill, here, do this. Oh, I was like, It is about sharing. It is about reaching into our experience, and instead of holding our hurts and our authority and our power onto ourselves, sharing what God has given us for the good of the world, and seeing what is returned to us. Taking that Ralph's coupon and running up to people in the stores and saying, this is for the Little White Chapel here. Would you pray with me? God, it's only life. It's only life. And you have said to us, we are spiritual beings traveling through this earthly existence. Help us love more and not be afraid to share your love. Yes, the world is torn apart and frightened of each other. Help us to be part of the balm. Help us to be part of the glue. Help us to be part of the epoxy that brings wholeness to our fragmented existence. In your Son's name we pray.